everyone. Today we're doing a video where we are going to talk about bold versus underline versus italics versus quote. We're talking about the nitty-gritty of documentation. When do you use something in bold? When do you underline it? When do you put it in italics? When do you put it in quotation marks? That's the topic that we're going to talk about today, because I've read a lot of student work. I've read a lot of papers, and this is something that confuses people like no other. Sometimes none are used. Sometimes they're used incorrectly. Sometimes it's just random. And sometimes they're used correctly, which I call a modern day miracle. I do want to clarify that I'm not going to be covering in this video when you pull something out of a text and quote it in something you're writing, or dialogue quotes. That's not what we're covering here. That's in a different video. We're talking about documentation, like if you're trying to cite a book or a magazine or an article. When do you underline, italics, quote, bold? That's all going to be answered right here. So let's start with bold. Here is rule number 1. Biggest rule for bold is don't do it. So let me explain. In academic or formal writing, we want to avoid using bold. It is not for documentation of a source that you're using, or citing something, or talking about a poem, or any. It is not, bold does not do that at all. So in academic writing, it just doesn't sit. It's like doing all caps. All right. So for the most part, you want to avoid bold. So like all caps, it's used for emphasis. And so it's very easy to overdo. And if you emphasize everything or a whole lot of things, then really it minimizes the use of it. Because if everything or a lot of stuff is in bold, then it gets very tiresome for the reader, because it's like you think everything is super duper important. And so the bottom line is to use sparingly. Now, in academic formal writing, though, I think it's safe to say that to use bold for a heading or a subheading to kind of make a distinction of movement within a paper you're writing, then doing bold works that way. And I also want to clarify that I'm not saying that there is not types of writing that bold is perfectly acceptable. So by all means, if you're doing creative writing or casual informal writing, like a blog post or something like that, absolutely use bold. But again, don't overdo it. Also, if you're quoting something that has something in bold, you want to replicate anything that someone else has written with a bold in your quote that you might be taking from another source. So in those circumstances, absolutely. But above all, though, keep this in mind. Do not combine bold with other things like underlining or italics. Underlining and italics have their own specialized uses. So putting those together does nothing for the documentation except make it wrong. So let's talk about underlining and italics when it comes to documentation, because again, so just like putting bold, italics can bring emphasis, but you want to use it this way minimally, just like minimal use of bolding. All right, now what you might see is something like this. You could read an article and it might say something like this. The politician said, "I do not recall seeing that document." Emphasis mine. So what's going on here? A writer is quoting someone else or something else, and within that quote, they want to emphasize or point out a particular part of it. So they purposefully put it in italics, but at the end of the quote, they add emphasis mine. Why? To let you know that that was not the original quote, but that they are kind of emphasizing a particular word or phrase within that quote. But that is not what we're talking about when we're talking about underlining and italics. This particular use is when you are trying to identify a specific work. And so there are specific works that you might come across, you would write down, that you would intentionally either underline if you're handwriting or put it in italics if you're typing. What are those? If it is a book, you would put it in italics, like The Great Gatsby. Titles of movies, like Avengers Endgame, also underlined or italics. Titles of albums, like the album Now, Not Yet by the band Half Alive. Notice the band name is, well, if they put it in all cap, not all caps, if they capitalize it as a proper noun, it would have the capital, but Half Alive doesn't do that. They put that little dot there in between half and alive. And you should listen to that band, by the way. Titles of newspapers, like the Union Tribune, are in italics. Titles of magazines like Time, Newsweek, Popular Mechanics, that kind of thing, you'd see underlined or in italics. If it's a play, the name of the play also italicized. Death of a Salesman, for instance. Names of long poems, and I mean long poems like size of books, like the Odyssey. That would be italicized as well. Short poems, that's something else. If it's a TV show like The Office, that would be italicized too. So that's pretty much a complete list of most things you're going to come across. All right, so that leaves us with one more. What goes in quotes then? So for quotes, how do we know, or what do we use quotes for when it comes to documentation? Well, the first one, chapters in a book or a movie. So let's take the first one. Like if The Great Gatsby had actually named the chapters and one of them was Daisy Take the Wheel, we'd put that in quotes while we italicize The Great Gatsby. For movies, now you probably have gone to like the menu of a movie and you see like 1 through 3 and you want to be able to find a certain part of a movie. Well, each of those usually have a title, like Back to the Beginning from Avengers Endgame. I made that up. I don't know that that's an actual section or chapter title of the movie, but oftentimes those sections have names as well, and those would go in quotes. Articles in a newspaper or magazine. If it's an article that you're citing, that would get in quotes, like Mission Valley Floods from the Union Tribune or The New Revolution from Time Magazine. So you can see like the bigger part, the bigger work gets the italics versus the smaller section of that is in quotes. It's kind of the rule of thumb. The actual songs of an album are in quotes. So from the Half Alive album Now, Not Yet, one of the songs is called Runaway, and it's in all caps. So I honored that right there, right? Runaway is in quotes, the song title. Next one, if a TV show, they've named the episode, and most of them do. Some of them even put it in the beginning credits, right? That would get in quotes. So if The Office called one of their episodes Kevin's Famous Chili, that episode title would be in quotes. The titles of short poems, like The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. If it's a smaller poem, not an epic giant poem, then that would go in quotes as well. And I believe that covers most of them, right? So this is one of those situations when it's best if you can memorize these, and they kind of make sense how the bigger ones or the more significant whole body of something is underlined or in italics, and smaller sections are in quotes, and that's a great way to kind of remember that, and you'll save yourself a lot of time. But you are always welcome to come back and watch this video to review. But thank you for watching, and I hope this helps clear some stuff up and is an assistance to you when you are trying to put a book title or a song title in your writing. Good luck. Take care until next time. Thanks for watching this video. It would be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. Here are some other videos in the Writing Workshop playlist where it can help you become a better writer, how to write essays and other things that I've explored with you. And then, of course, some additional playlists just to check out for funsies. We'll see you soon.